Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Left, Wrong, and Center. Today, I'm going to kind of delve into the first, current events episode, I suppose. The last couple of episodes, we've done an interview. There will be more of those. And then we, kind of opened up with a few episodes that were phrased as questions that I wanted to talk about ideas on. There will be plenty more of those. There's a lot to talk about when it comes to politics in the United States. And I don't necessarily have a roadmap for what I'm going to stick to. I don't think I'm going to stick to anything. I think it's going to vary week by week. One week I might talk about something that happened 100 years ago, and another week I might talk about last year, and another week I might talk about what's coming up in the next 6 months. So hope that's cool. If not, I'm sorry. So today I kind of wanted to talk. I'm recording this on February 21st. So, guys, we are only 1 month into this nightmare. He's only been back in office for a month, as difficult as that may be to believe, because every single day of that month in itself has felt like its own week, with multiple monstrosities and direct assaults on our way of life. Each hour, it seems, every push notification I get is talking about some new institution being dismantled, some new horrific figure being confirmed to an important position, some new idea coming out, some key ally being alienated. And it's going to be impossible, I think, to talk about all of this in an episode where it's going to be organized and concise. There's no way, I think, to cover in 30, 40 minutes everything that's happened in the last month, because there's been so much. But I'm going to do my best to kind of summarize the feeling of how I have been viewing everything and how I've been feeling about everything. So here we go. To be incredibly clear, Trump 2.0 is every bit as bad as Democrats warned it would be. It's just as focused on the widening of cultural divides as we said it would be. It's just as unfocused on any true problem solving for real Americans. But we knew that, and we talked about it, and we warned about it, because there's never been a focus on helping anybody from Trump's Republican Party. And that's kind of barely scratching the surface. I've noticed a lot of weak language, and I've posted about it on social media via infographic and those stupid little things that I'm doing with my handwriting and uploading to try and summarize an issue or something that comes up in real time. I just kind of do those on the fly, and so there's not really a consistency with how I post them as of now anyway. I've just noticed a lot of really weak language around that from the internet. And I'll talk about that. I think that might be its own episode, but there's a lot of people that can't wrap themselves quite around the idea of the Trump administration and the man himself not existing in good faith. I think there's a lot of people who are just programmed to believe that if you're the president, if you ran on, a platitude or some idea, then that's actually what you cared about. And that if you are, going back on those promises or never intended to keep those promises to begin with, then somehow, you're hand-wringing and complaining online about how, well, doesn't he realize that this isn't actually going to help anybody? And yes, he does. It's the same way that I feel about the internet and many politicians on both sides of the aisle, which is a rare statement for me, focusing on the qualifications of Trump's cabinet rather than the danger they pose to the country. But I think we'll talk about that more in depth later. First, I want to say that a friend of mine messaged me about the stuff that I post, and she said, I really appreciate that you're not alarmist on this podcast. And I appreciate that. I'm going to strive not to be alarmist, because I don't think that getting everybody riled up and panicked is necessarily the answer here. But yeah, I don't want to echo the voices of people that are online making every single thing sound like it's the end of the world. something can be bad, dangerous, damaging, harmful without being the end of American democracy. That being said, there's a lot that is a direct threat to American democracy. Second, we kind of have to pace ourselves. It's going to be nearly impossible to talk about every single crisis that is facing the country with Trump in office. Third, we're here. This is our reality now, and this is going to be our reality for the next 3 years and 11 months at least. And the only way out is through. That's what I keep saying to people. Somebody said that to me like the day after he was elected, and I've tried to internalize it because it's true. The only way out is through. We have to find a way to survive this. And at the end of whatever this era of politics are, things might look quite different, but we have to find a way to survive. And that's going to require us to do what we can to keep our anger productive and focused rather than allowing our grief and our sadness to consume us. I've said to a few friends now that I don't even feel as though I've properly grieved the 2016 election, Hillary's loss, properly, and I'll really only be able to grieve when this era of history is over. I was talking to a friend the other day about Hamilton, the musical, and she sent me a screenshot of that Yay Hamlet tweet. You might remember if you are in musical theater. And I just kind of like looked at her and I was like, do you remember 2015? Do you remember what 2015 felt like? Because I don't. But I do. And that's what makes it so sad, because I do remember how it felt, and it just feels like it happened. It was a different lifetime. Fourth, a big theme of this first month of Trump in office that I've been really disappointed by average users of the internet. I've been disappointed but entirely unsurprised, is the Democratic bashing. I did an entire episode on this, but I will criticize Democrats when Democratic actions rise to a level that make them more dangerous to the country than Republicans. That time is not now. That time was not in the last 4 years. That time was not in the last 8 years. It was not in the last 10, 12, 15, 20. It has not happened. Democrats are the only good political party with people in it that are operating in good faith. And until that changes, and until the Democrats rise to the level of Republicans or worse, you will not hear me bashing Democrats on this podcast. What Trump and Musk and largely forgotten and overlooked, but just as dangerous, Vance, aided and abetted by congressional Republicans, not Congress, not Democrats, not the government as a whole, not both sides equally, Republicans are doing is, and going back to that alarmist thing that I said earlier, about to break that seal, I guess, is nothing short of trying to dismantle every single institution that has been built up over decades, even centuries, that have contributed to protecting the rights and liberties and securities of American citizens. That's what's happening right now. That's what the first 30 days of the Trump administration have been all about. It's really that simple. This is not a president even aiming to please or satisfy his voters. He is taking a flamethrower to the values and the needs of red states just as much, if not more, than the people in blue states. This is an administration, as we warned all through the campaign, Biden, Harris, all of the Democrats running. It's an administration hell-bent on revenge by way of destruction. What is happening right now at the hands of Trump and Elon Musk is not normal. It's not business as usual, and it's bad. So starting on day one, Trump signed 26 executive orders, and the majority of them were focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and targeting immigrants, which, again, Democrats could have and did tell you that would be a major focus of the Trump administration, putting that above any cost issue, any economic issue, any safety issue, anything like that. 26 executive orders is the most executive orders signed on day one by a president since 1937. He signed 36 in his first week, which is more than the last 15 presidents, according to the Hearst television data team. Executive orders are issued by the president and do not require Congress. They are subject to legal challenge, as we're seeing now. He's signing these pieces of paper and facing the camera and holding them up and looking like an absolute doofus doing so. They are subject to legal challenge and they can be ruled unconstitutional. But the time between signing and such an unguaranteed ruling as finding, an executive order unconstitutional is lost time in which a lot of damage can be done. Also, when Joe Biden signed 17 executive orders on day one of his presidency, he was derided by Republicans as ruling like a king, and that you can't rule in America on executive orders, and why isn't he going through Congress? But of course, we're hearing crickets now because they like what Trump is doing. They like the attack on DEI. They like the attack on immigration, abortion, etc. As of today, me recording this, Trump has signed 70 executive orders. 70 compared to Biden in his first 100 days. Trump has been in office for a month. He signed 70 executive orders. Biden in his first 100 days signed 42. Obama signed 19, and Bill Clinton signed 13. Trump's only been in office for a month. Many of these orders, for example, the defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government order, which declares that U.S. policy only recognizes two genders, and the ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing order, ending diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across the federal government, and the initial, what did I write here? Initial rescissions, that's what it is, of harmful executive orders and actions, which repeals dozens of Biden-era executive orders that are designed to protect immigrants, LGBT people, and fight climate change. We have the prioritizing military excellence and readiness, which is a ban on transgender service people serving in our armed forces. Restoring America's fighting force, which is ending DEI in the military. Ending radical indoctrination in K through 12 schooling, which basically means you're not allowed to talk about anything that somebody who's a Republican might deem as gender education, gender extremism, whatever the hell that means. The keeping men out of women's sports order, which speaks for itself, another attack on trans people. My favorite is the eradicating anti-Christian bias order, which establishes a task force to eradicate anti-Christian bias in the good old USA. These are red meat for his hateful base. They are intended to make America's most vulnerable people more vulnerable for the sake of further dividing people along these cultural lines that I was talking about in the last episode. And then there are other orders, including the reevaluating and realigning United States foreign aid, which is an order that pauses financial assistance to our allies across the globe, including Ukraine, withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization, which we've done that before. Look where it got us. Imposing duties to address the flow of illicit drugs at our northern border, which that order places a 25% tariff on goods from Canada, which will raise costs for every American, P.S. Imposing duties to address the synthetic opioid supply chain in the People's Republic of China order, which places a 25% tariff on Mexican goods, alienating our two immediate neighbors and key trading partners, isolating us from our allies across the globe. And still others, like the executive order that seeks to end birthright citizenship, which is guaranteed in the United States Constitution, are meant to test the limits of his executive power and quite literally change the Constitution via a Supreme Court ruling that he is hoping will be favorable to him. Because the executive order is signed, obviously it's being challenged by Democratic-aligned groups. It will make its way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will literally have to decide what's more important, the United States Constitution or their king. However, one executive order stands heads and shoulders above the rest in an incredibly sinister and menacing way, and that is from February 18th. the ensuring accountability for all agencies order, which is the most direct threat to the country as we know it that has been issued yet. With this order, should it be upheld, or even key pieces of it upheld, all federal agencies. I'm gonna actually read this off of my phone. I saw a post on Facebook that summarizes the stakes of this very nicely from Antonia Eden Dana. So I will tag this account when I post this on social media. All federal agencies, including independent regulatory commissions, are now subject to White House control. Regulations cannot be issued without presidential approval. The Office of Management and Budget, OMB, can withhold funding from independent agencies that do not align with White House values. That means MAGA values right now. All federal employees must follow the president and an attorney general's interpretation of the law, eliminating legal independence. I'm going to read that one again. All federal employees must follow the president and the attorney general's interpretation of the law, eliminating legal independence. A White House liaison is to be installed in every independent regulatory agency to enforce direct presidential control. I'm now going to read the aforementioned summary that Antonia Eden Dana posted on Facebook because it's well said, and I think better than I could say it right now. This is the biggest executive power grab in U.S. history. This formally ends the concept of an independent regulatory agency, dismantling one of the last barriers to absolute executive power. This order effectively erases the last major restraints on executive power. The federal government no longer operates with checks and balances. Regulations and laws are now dictated solely by the president. If left unchecked, this is the moment the U.S. ceases to function as a democratic republic. I'll pause here and say this executive order will be challenged, and I'm sure parts of it, at least, will be struck down. Back to the summary. The president now controls all regulatory agencies. The SEC, FTC, FCC, and FEC are no longer independent. The stock market is now subject to White House control, enabling insider trading, favoritism, and targeting of political opponents. I'll say that again, targeting of political opponents. Antitrust laws can be selectively enforced, allowing administration-friendly monopolies to expand unchecked. Political opponents in the tech sector, media, or finance can be targeted with regulatory action while allies are protected. Elections are now influenced by direct White House oversight of the Federal Election Commission. That's the FEC. The FDA, EPA, and consumer protection agencies are fully politicized, meaning that drug approvals, food safety regulations, and environmental policies can be rewritten for political or corporate interests. Climate change regulations can be erased overnight. Scientific research is now subject to White House approval before public release. I'm going to say that part again, too. Scientific research is now subject to White House approval before public release. We've seen this already with the order given to the health agencies that all research is, outward communications of research is blocked right now. Back to the summary. Implication. There is no longer any neutral enforcement of economic, environmental, or election laws. Everything is now dictated by political loyalty, just as Democrats said. The White House can block agency budgets or direct funds elsewhere. The OMB can now adjust funding allocations for independent agencies. This gives the president the power to defund agencies without needing Congress. Regulatory agencies that will challenge presidential policies will be quietly strangled of resources. Agencies loyal to the president will receive full funding, even illegally. Implication here is that Congress no longer controls federal spending, which is the entire purpose of its existence, or on regulatory enforcement. The executive branch can choke out opposition agencies and reward allies. 3. The president and attorney general have final say on all legal interpretations. All federal employees must follow the White House interpretations of the law. The attorney general, who is Pam Bondi, and an avid election denier and Trump loyalist, by the way, the attorney general's opinions override agency lawyers, inspectors general, and independent counsel. Agencies cannot adopt their own interpretations of legal statutes. Everything must align with the president's views. The president can rewrite federal legal interpretations overnight. Implication. Legal consistency is gone. Agencies cannot push back against corrupt, illegal, or unconstitutional directives because the president's interpretation is the only interpretation allowed. Installing White House liaisons in all regulatory agencies. A White House liaison will be placed in every independent agency. This ensures constant presidential oversight of daily operations. These liaisons will report agency actions back to the White House and enforce political compliance. Agency directors will no longer have the ability to act without White House approval. Implication, there is now a direct enforcement arm inside every regulatory body. Even agencies that resist presidential control will eventually be monitored and controlled. I don't think that I have to explain that this is it's an enormous deal and is being swept completely under the rug. I saw the other night on CNN, Trump signed this executive order stating that the president and the attorney general are the only two people that have the right to interpret the law. And CNN's headline was about Trump signing an executive order expanding access to IVF. Media is not going to help us. Media is in his pocket. Media is owned by billionaires who support Trump, which Democrats have been saying for years now. It's been true for a very long time. This is an enormous deal, and it is such an obvious power grab, and one that, if left unchecked, legitimately ends the entire premise of America as we know it. That cannot be overstated. It just can't. Within 1 month, Donald Trump, his cabinet, and his unelected billionaire lapdog, or vice versa, whichever way it goes, unclear, have, in broad daylight, and with the full awareness of anyone paying a little bit of attention, taken extraordinary steps to bring the entire system of checks and balances crashing down around us so that the American government serves the whims and the fancies of one man. It's stunning, and it's completely and totally unsurprising at the same time. Every Democrat warned clearly and repeatedly that this would happen. We were correct, and we were ignored. Trump's cabinet and Congress will do nothing whatsoever to serve as a check either. We already knew this, but we've seen Republicans very, very easily, as again, let's repeat this again, every Democrat running for office in 2024 warned. Every Democrat running for office in 2022 warned. Every Democrat running for office in 2020 warned. This is nothing new. We've been saying it clearly, consistently, for years. Every Republican, with the exception of one odd vote here and there, is falling in line with Trump. They are publicly, waxing their misgivings and their concerns, Susan Collins, and I just don't know. I don't know if I can support. Oh, well, we don't know if this person has support to get the votes in the Senate, and then they coast through. Pam Bondi, our new Attorney General, who now has unprecedented power to interpret the law, is an avid election denier, Trump loyalist. Kash Patel, who was just confirmed as the head of the FBI, and who has openly stated that he will persecute Trump's political opponents, another Trump loyalist. Tulsi Gabbard is a Putin and Assad sympathizer with pro-Russia views and is the head of our National Intelligence Agency. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is now in charge of our health department and doesn't believe in vaccines and has come out with some really batshit beliefs on medications. His first priority is to examine antidepressants. Pete Hegseth, who was confirmed by a tie-breaking vote from J.D. Vance. Thank you, Pennsylvania, for the 15,000 of you who didn't show up to vote for Bob Casey for that. Doesn't believe that women should serve in combat roles or vote. Kristi Noem shot her dog. I mean, we have a cabinet full of, and it's so easy to sit around and call them clowns. And, liberal social media circles love to make fun of and demean, and rightly so. These are stupid people, but they are evil people. They are dangerous people, and they are in positions of now relatively unchecked power. They are not coming to our aid. If we can't get 2 or 3 Republicans in the United States Senate to break off and not confirm a Russian asset to head our national intelligence agency, or to refuse to support someone like RFK to lead our health agencies, we can expect that these people are going to fall in line with the president every step of the way. There is no backbone. There is no courage. And importantly, when Mitch McConnell votes no on Hegseth and Kennedy and Gabbard, but not Kash Patel, he doesn't get a pat on the back. He doesn't get flowers. He doesn't get roses for having courage, because he put us here. It's him who put us here. And yes, I'm well aware that there are Democrats who have crossed over and supported some of these nominees. They have supported the less dangerous ones, although John Fetterman should not have voted for Pam Bondi. I don't know what on earth he's doing. But I mean, there is something to be said for, choosing your battles, and these people are going to be confirmed anyway. That's the argument that I've been having with a lot of people. If there's somebody who's a run-of-the-mill Republican who's nominated for a cabinet position, and you're in a purple state, a red state, a light blue state, and these people are going to be confirmed anyway, yeah, we're at the beginning of the term. Go ahead and just, show that you're willing to play ball. I don't like it. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. But we need to be very clear that there's going to be no check on the president from his own party, and that his opposing party is in the minority in numbers that don't have the power to stop him from doing these things. I started posting weekly breakdowns, weekly summaries of some of the headlines when Trump came back into office. And I usually post those on Sundays, and I'll probably continue doing them. But I feel like I need to I'm going to take I've been, taking notes on the stuff that's happening, writing down bullet points so that I remember what to post about. So I'm just going to kind of summarize to the best of my ability. This is a little bit more of an unfocused episode, so sorry. But I'm going to kind of summarize what's been going on. I think the first and foremost, this is not necessarily in order with putting this first. On his first day, Trump signed an executive order establishing the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, led by Elon Musk, who has accessed all kinds of information, financial and other, about every person in this country. And this agency is responsible for the laying off of public servants across the federal government. Thousands upon thousands of people in health and education are being let go in secure. It's stunning, but again, unsurprising as it was laid out in Project 2025 that Democrats warned about consistently on the campaign trail. That is the biggest, apart from what I just talked about with that executive order, that's the biggest concern that I have as a citizen right now, is letting an unelected billionaire oligarch essentially run rampant and have fun and do whatever he wants to do. It's, again, it was so preventable, so easy to see from a mile away on the campaign trail, and so stupid that people are now going, oh, I don't like this, because what else did you need? So immediately upon returning to office, as I mentioned with the aforementioned executive orders, Trump signed an executive order requiring health agencies to stop external communications with American citizens, repealed transgender protection, rolling back that immediately, is trying to overturn or repeal the 14th Amendment, immediately pardoned all January 6th defendants, repealed as much of the bipartisan infrastructure bill from 2021 as possible, and stalled the use of the funds being pumped into communities across the country to repair our crumbling infrastructure. Put DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, people working in that field in the federal government on paid leave on day one, threatened and has now gone through with and then walked back 25% tariffs on Canada and Mexico, removed the abortion search result on the Federal Department of Health and Human Services website, withdrew Secret Service protection from former advisors that he didn't care for that are under threat from adversaries. Roll back. He targeted the Equal Opportunity Employer Act of 1964. Removal of the Office of Gun Violence Prevention the day before a shooting. They pushed through, tried to push through an anti-abortion bill, which Democrats blocked in the Senate. Tried to freeze all federal spending, which affects and hurts Medicaid recipients, school children, and elderly citizens. That particular act was blocked, but was essentially intended to cut school lunch and breakfast plans and programs for low-income families who rely on them to feed their kids. Meals on Wheels, which feeds more than 2 million seniors annually. It didn't accept Medicaid, which is the healthcare coverage for 80 million people in this country, the poorest people in this country. Would have cut billions of dollars allocated through the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law dispersed via the EPA, which includes clean water provisions for the country, billions of dollars from the Department of Health and Human Services to health centers, universities, hospitals, and research groups halted. TAMF, which is more commonly referred to as welfare, aka a safety net for low-income Americans, was put at risk. State grants for childcare, Head Start programs for early childhood education, the Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for women, infants, and children, and Section 8 rental assistance were all on the chopping block, and I would say are still on the chopping block. This order is an attack on an obsession with DEI, quote, DEI woke gender ideology and the Green New Deal. That is direct verbiage from the order. The Green New Deal is not a law that has been enacted. And, should this find its way forward, trillions of dollars and millions of lives will be disrupted by Trump's obsession with attacking minorities in America. Trump fired a dozen inspectors general in the middle of the night. He publicly has been floating running for a third term, which is unconstitutional and has not been allowed. He introduced holding migrants in Guantanamo Bay. And then planes have been falling out of the sky. It's not funny, but it is. It's so ridiculous. But Trump used that first crash to blame DEI, pinned the crash on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'm begging people to understand that this is not the ramblings of an insane man that we just sit and scoff and laugh and roll our eyes at. This is a strategy. It is a strategy. It is intended to rally public sympathy for his goals of not only targeting DEI initiatives, but for larger persecutions across the board. Clinton's emails, Biden's age, Harris's, quote, transgender surgeries for illegal alien stories proved that if something is repeated by someone in a position of power enough, resources, time, energy, political capital, and media oxygen are deployed and rerouted from true issues and real problems to put out the flames and talk about these non-realities. B, people believe it. If it's repeated enough, it becomes a story and people begin to automatically connect in their brains, DEI with whatever problems they're seeing, either on the news or in their own lives. Trump created the DEI crisis, and the media has bowed to it and created the story. It is very dangerous, but understanding that it is intentional is crucial. By trying to tie people of color LGBT plus people, women, or you fill in the blank, whatever oppressed group we're talking about, to these plane crashes that are happening all over the country now. It's happening all over the place. Financial woes and your everyday problems, the focus stays off of Trump's plan to rob you blind of your money, rights, and dignity, and stays on these groups that have become lightning rods for people's fury and anger. I like to say, don't trip up over shiny objects, look for what they are meant to hide. And you have these shiny objects that are being dangled in front of the American people: diversity, equity, and inclusion, race, transgender, all of it. And I'm begging people to look past those easy rage bait clicks. And I'm talking to people on both sides. The people left of center, I think, have the mental capacity to actually do this, whereas the right is lost. The FAA leader quit because of Elon Musk. Elon Musk pressured the FAA boss to quit 1 week before the Potomac River plane crash. Elon Musk pushed him out. The traffic control tower was understaffed the night of that first crash, and it's happening all over the place. Trump is politicizing this occurrence to distract and deflect and keep people talking about this and distract people with this rather than his very unpopular agenda, his very unpopular cabinet nominees, now, secretaries, and the fact that eggs are skyrocketing, the price of eggs are skyrocketing, which was a really big deal to Republicans just a few months ago, and now doesn't matter. Distracting from the tariffs, distracting from all of it. It is a distraction, but it is a strategic distraction. Trump's Supreme Court will get to decide if you get to receive preventative health care. Justices Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, John Roberts, Brett Kavanaugh, and Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, the conservative majority on the Supreme Court, are going to get to decide whether millions of Americans under the protections of the Affordable Care Act will have access to no-cost cancer screenings, HIV prevention medications, and heart statins, which is a medication that lowers cholesterol and reduces risk of heart attack and stroke. This decision will have a disproportionately enormous impact on low-income Americans who cannot afford these expensive medications and services. This is yet another thing that Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris all warned of in their campaigns for president. Trump's election in 2016 and subsequent appointment of 3 of the 6 justices named that I just read off from the little press release that I wrote, fake press release, whatever, has all but guaranteed a massive loss of rights and liberties at the hands of the Supreme Court. Moving on from that, Allison Riggs, a justice in North Carolina, a Democrat, won her election by a couple hundred votes for her Supreme Court seat. The GOP-controlled North Carolina Supreme Court in January blocked the certification of the election after initial election results and a Republican-requested recount confirmed that she won her election to the state's high court. Jefferson Griffin, her opponent, filed a suit trying to throw out 60,000 ballots. Most of the lower court rulings have overruled this, but it's continued to be blocked. It will eventually go back to the North Carolina Supreme Court. They're trying to steal an election in North Carolina. The Republican Congress chose to prioritize immigration over economic legislation. The GOP-led House of Representatives, their first official bill to move through to the Senate was the Laken-Riley Act, which is essentially a bill that grants law enforcement the right to detain any illegal or any immigrant that is suspected to be illegal in this country illegally. 48 House Democrats joined Republican in support, and a number of Senate Democrats, including Ruben Gallego, who lives in a border state, and John Fetterman, supported the bill when it came to the Senate. This act is likely the first of many that will target undocumented immigrants in the United States in the wake of voters who actually showed up at the polls in November, moving notably rightward on the issue of border security. Republican Andy Biggs introduced legislation to abolish OSHA. OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. It's a federal agency that sets and enforces workplace safety standards and also provides key training and assistance to ensure safe and healthy working conditions. In the most obvious of obvious, I told you so, Trump has promised that the United States will take over Gaza. His quote is that we will, quote, own it. And this one, man, this issue is a lightning rod, and you can't talk about it without getting attacked by trolls. But it's really, really difficult not to lose your mind when things like this happen, exactly as you said that they would. Gen Z, the uncommitted movement, and the TikTok activists who nuked the Biden presidency over this issue, despite a clear warning of this precise outcome, are nowhere to be found. An entire movement of people showed their entire ass with their anti-Semitism and proudly abstained from voting for Joe Biden in the primary or Kamala Harris in the general, willingly threw our country to the wolves over this, their oversimplified view of this issue. And here comes Donald Trump vowing to level and occupy Gaza exactly as we said he would, and literally using the same language. That's the word that I've been using that I used throughout the entire campaign. Donald Trump will level Gaza. But is it okay for him to say that he wants to occupy the Strip because he's not Jewish? And I'm just really confused as to where the activists are decrying this. Why is this not in my feed every day? Why is this not taking up every bit of my feed? Where's the TikTok outrage? Where are the protests? I don't see them. It's absolutely shameful. Anybody who enabled the destruction of our country over this issue should be so embarrassed, and they're not. There's no shame. The RNC has asked the Supreme Court to restrict provisional voting in Pennsylvania. And let's talk about what that means, because I live in Erie, Pennsylvania, which is a key swing county in this key swing state. I almost said Keystone State, which would have also been right. But there was an issue getting voters who requested ballots by mail before the 2024 election. Thousands of people who requested mail-in ballots did not receive them in time. And many of those voters went to vote early, but those who couldn't were told to go to the polls and request a provisional ballot, which is, I just said ballot, which is required by law. And now we're trying to challenge access to provisional voting. You put the pieces together. People who vote by mail since COVID have been traditionally Democratic voters. It is voter suppression. And it's right in front of our faces. On her first day as Attorney General, Pam Bondi eliminated the FBI effort to end foreign influence in American elections. I'll say that again. Pam Bondi eliminated the FBI's effort to end foreign interference in American elections. Russell Vogt, a Project 2025 author, was confirmed to lead the Office of Management and Budget. The Department of Justice demanded that the Eric Adams investigation be dropped in his indictments because they need him to cooperate with them on immigration in New York City. Google removed Black History Month, Pride Month, Holocaust Remembrance Day, and more from its calendar. 25% tariffs globally on aluminum and steel have been imposed. Trump is hosting peace talks in the Ukraine-Russia conflict with Russia and not Ukraine, and is telling Ukraine that it's going to have to give up some of the land that was taken and occupied by Russia. And not only saying that, he's saying that Ukraine, who was invaded, a sovereign nation invaded, shouldn't have started this war. The official White House channels posted a photo of Trump with a crown on and called him a king. These are the channels that foreign leaders around the world see and officially represent us. Trump is aiming to privatize the United States Postal Service and fire the USPS board. I have been talking for a very long time. There's a lot of things that I've kind of spat out here. I will do an episode on some of the good things that have happened, because there are good things happening with Democrats at the state level, and actions being taken by Democrats to protect their constituents where they have the power to do so. I understand that people are tired. I'm tired talking about this. It's a lot, and it's only going to get worse. We have to stay aware and informed, so that when we have the mechanisms to do so, we can fight back. We can take our country back. But guys, it's only been a month. We're only just shy of 3% of the way through the next 4 years. And I'm fully taking this opportunity to say I told you so to anybody who didn't vote for Kamala Harris. It has been a 30-day assault on our country, and voters had every single warning that they needed to avoid this happening, and they chose it anyway. That's not smug. That's not me looking down my nose. Well, maybe a little. That is just the truth. And as I said at the beginning, the only way out of this is through it. So I can't throw my hands up. I can't throw my hands up and say, it's over. We've lost everything. We've lost our ability to, this was our last election. Of course that's a concern. Of course I'm worried about that. Of course I'm worried that we're not going to have free and fair elections going forward. But the only time to do the next right thing is next time. And this should be a sobering lesson that when somebody tells you that your mechanism to impact and make change is your vote, that is the truth, and you need to exercise it. And you need to exercise it for the one that is closer to who you align with. And if people had showed up, Kamala Harris would have won the election, because more people in the country align with Kamala Harris, align with the Democrats on policy. They're getting sucked into the politics of it all. And this last 30 days is the consequence of ignorance, of bad faith, of terrible comparisons and both sidesism, of people throwing up their hands and saying nothing I do is gonna make a difference anyway. I don't need to vote. This is cause and effect. It's clear cut. I feel like I didn't even put a dent in what the last month has entailed. I feel like I didn't even put a dent in it, because there's so much. It has only been a month. We have 47 of them to go. And I don't know what to tell anybody to do except get involved at the local level, get involved in the New Jersey and Virginia elections coming up, and in your local municipal elections. There's no such thing as an off year. And next year we have midterms. And assuming that our ability to vote is not stripped from us before then, we have to show up, and we have to show up in numbers that are big enough to take back the House and the Senate, which will serve as somewhat of a check on Trump for his last 2 years in office. And then we have to show up in 2028 for whoever the likely centrist nominee on the Democratic side of the aisle will be. We could have had nice things. We could have taken 2015 and all of the things that we took for granted in 2015, and we could have built upon them with the 2016 election and the 2020 election and the 2024 election, and we didn't do that. And we are seeing the consequences unraveling in front of us very quickly. So this has not been a happy episode either, but pay attention and take what I've said in this episode and recognize that these are real things, and that these are real things that were very clearly laid out in a campaign. I will talk to you next time. Thanks for listening.